My name is Jordan Cole. I'm 28 years old and I used to work as a freelance audio engineer. That job's what dragged me into this. I've never told the full story before, only pieces to a few close friends, and even they think I'm either lying or losing my mind. But I'm done keeping it quiet. Maybe if I put it out there, someone else will recognize what I went through. Maybe someone else will admit they've heard it too. It all started with a gig I picked up back in the summer of 2022 in Stillwater, Oklahoma. I was living in Tulsa at the time, bouncing between gigs and trying to save enough to move to Austin. One evening, I got an email from a guy named Dave Rucker. Said he was working on a documentary about sonic hauntings in rural America, basically places where the paranormal manifests as sound instead of visuals. He'd read some of my audio restoration work online and wanted me to clean up a few tapes he'd recovered from a supposedly abandoned farmhouse just outside of Stillwater. The money was good. He offered $900 up front for 1 week of work, plus bonuses if I could make the recordings usable for his project. I didn't ask too many questions. I just took the job. He mailed me a small cardboard box with 5 cassette tapes inside. Each one was labeled in faded Sharpie. Tape A, Tape B, Tape C, Tape D, Tape E. There was also a note inside that read, "These were found in the Hartwell house. Do not listen without headphones. Do not play them out loud." I thought it was some kind of prank, like a cheap marketing gimmick, but curiosity got the better of me. I digitized the first tape in my apartment late that night. I was using a good Sony deck hooked up to my laptop. The tape began with about 15 seconds of static, then I heard what sounded like an old man humming softly. There was the sound of floorboards creaking, distant thunder, and what I think was wind passing through a broken window. It was subtle, creepy, sure, but nothing that felt supernatural. Then at the 2:12 mark, the humming stopped. And I swear to God I heard a whisper, not like an EVP you'd catch on a ghost hunting show. This was clear, as if someone was right behind me, breathing into my ear. "You shouldn't be here." I paused the audio, looked around the room. Nothing. I lived alone. My windows were shut. I played it again. Same voice, same line, but this time it added something else. "You brought it with you." Over the next 2 days, I went through tapes B and C. Things got darker. Tape B was full of shrill feedback and low-frequency rumbling, like someone dragging something heavy across a wooden floor. At one point, there were screams. Not loud, not exaggerated, just strained, tired, almost resigned. And there was this rhythmic knocking that repeated every 13 seconds. Tape C was the worst so far. Halfway through it, I had to stop and get some air. It was just one sound, over and over, like teeth chattering, but not from cold. It was too fast, too panicked. And underneath it, a low male voice kept repeating, "It's in the walls." By this point, I'd started having trouble sleeping. I was hearing faint noises in my apartment, scraping in the ceiling, whispering behind the bathroom mirror. I chalked it up to nerves, to being too deep into the project. But then the knocking started, always at night, always every 13 seconds. I called Dave Rucker, told him something was wrong. He didn't answer, so I did something I now regret more than anything. I drove to Stillwater to find the farmhouse. Took me 3 hours. The address on the tapes didn't exist in any GPS, but after searching forums for local urban explorers, I found a reference to the Hartwell property. Abandoned since 1981 after the original owner, Luther Hartwell, was declared missing. Locals said the place was off. No one went near it. I parked half a mile out and hiked in through a trail thick with brush and poison oak. The house was 2 stories tall, sagging, the roof caved in on one side. A rusted pickup was still in the driveway. Broken glass covered the porch. Inside, it smelled like rotting paper and mildew. The walls were covered in old audio equipment, tape reels, speakers, wires that snaked across the floor like veins. Every room had a microphone hanging from the ceiling, some with hand-scrawled notes taped to them. Don't listen past 3 a.m. No playback in bedrooms. She hears everything. I went upstairs and found a bedroom where the wall had been torn out completely, exposing insulation. Inside the wall cavity, dozens of cassette tapes were stacked neatly, labeled only with dates. The last one was dated August 9th, 1981. That was the day Luther Hartwell disappeared. I took that one. I labeled it Tape F when I got back to Tulsa. I should have destroyed it. The audio starts with silence, then breathing. Ragged, exhausted breathing. At around the 4-minute mark, a voice, trembling, barely above a whisper, says, "She's in the floorboards now. I didn't bury her deep enough." Then, scratching, like something with nails crawling through wood. And then a woman's voice, high and cracked, starts laughing. No build-up, no change in tone. Just laughter, relentless and wrong. It went on for over 7 minutes. I blacked out while listening. When I woke up, the tape had ejected itself. After that night, I started seeing her. Reflections, corners, shadows under the door, always the same silhouette. A woman in a thin white dress, mouth too wide, arms limp at her sides like broken sticks. She never moved when I looked straight at her. But when I turned away, I'd hear the tape click on, playing static until I turned back. My apartment stank of old wood and blood. Neighbors started complaining about someone crying through the walls. I lived alone. Then one morning I woke up with a cassette in my hand. One I didn't own. Labeled simply, Jordan 1. I don't remember recording anything. Each night a new tape appears. They're all blank until I listen. Then the sounds begin. Me breathing in my sleep. Me talking to someone in my room. But the other voice isn't mine. It's her. I've moved 5 times, thrown out the tapes, burned them, smashed my equipment. But they come back. Always in a box marked with my name. Always with a new recording. The last one had a date. September 1st, 2025. Today. It ends with my own voice, whispering, "She's here." I don't expect anyone to believe me, but if you've ever found a tape with no label or heard something on a recording that wasn't supposed to be there, stop listening. Don't try to analyze it. Don't dig deeper. She's drawn to sound, and once she knows your voice, she finds you. My name is Liam Bennett, and I wish I could forget the summer of 2019. The events that unfolded in Myrtle Beach still haunt me, and every time I think about them, I feel a chill crawl up my spine. I had just turned 24, and after a rough breakup and a few months of soul-searching, I decided to take a solo trip down to South Carolina. I needed a break, a place where I could relax, drink some beers by the beach, and hopefully clear my head. My friend Mark, who lived in Charleston, had recommended I visit Myrtle Beach. He called it the last touristy spot before the real ghost stories start. I didn't know then how true his words would turn out to be. I booked a room at an old motel off the main strip. It was a budget option, but the reviews were solid. People seemed to like the location, and honestly, I didn't care too much about the place as long as it had a bed. The hotel was called the Seaside Inn, a weathered building painted in shades of blue and white, with a small cracked sign out front. When I checked in, the receptionist, a woman with graying hair named Judy, greeted me with a smile that seemed a little too forced. She handed me my room key, one of those old-fashioned brass ones, and then, before I could leave, she said something strange. "Be careful when the sun goes down. Some of the guests don't come back after dark." I thought she was joking. I laughed awkwardly and assured her I'd be fine. I didn't expect her warning to haunt me for the rest of my life. The first few hours went smoothly. I walked around the boardwalk, grabbed some dinner, and returned to my room around 9 p.m. The room itself was small but cozy, with an old bed, a TV that only got a few channels, and a window that faced the beach. The air was warm and salty, the sound of the ocean lapping against the shore providing a calming backdrop. I opened the window to let in the breeze and spent a while just watching the waves. Around 11 p.m., I started hearing noises outside my window. At first, I thought it was just the wind rustling through the palm trees, but the sound was persistent, almost like footsteps. I stood up, walked over to the window, and peered out into the darkness. That's when I saw him. A man, standing in the shadow of the trees. He was tall, maybe 6'4", dressed in a long, black coat that seemed out of place in the warmth of the evening. His face was turned toward me, but I couldn't see any features. It was as if his face had been erased, leaving nothing but smooth, pale skin. I blinked, and when I looked again, he was gone. I convinced myself it was just my mind playing tricks on me. Maybe the stress of the breakup was messing with me. Still, I felt unsettled. I locked the window and drew the curtains, trying to shake the feeling of unease creeping over me. The next day, I tried to forget about the man I saw. I went to the beach, enjoyed the sunshine, and met a few people. But as the sun began to set, the feeling of dread returned. Something about the night seemed different. The air felt thick, like the world was holding its breath. Around 10 p.m., I decided to head back to my room. I passed by the motel lobby on my way, and Judy was sitting there, staring blankly at the TV. When she saw me, she gave me a nod, but there was something in her eyes, something I couldn't quite place. As I passed her, I heard her whisper under her breath, "He's coming for you." I stopped in my tracks, turning to face her. "What did you just say?" I asked, my voice catching. She blinked, almost as if she hadn't spoken at all. "Nothing, dear. Have a good night." I didn't know what to think, but something in her tone sent a cold shiver down my spine. I quickly walked away and made my way to the stairs leading up to my room. As I neared my door, I saw him again. The same tall man, standing just outside the entrance to the motel, this time facing the ocean. His posture was rigid, almost mechanical, and the wind didn't seem to affect him. But there was something new about him. His eyes. They were black, solid black, like two voids that swallowed all light. I felt my heart stop in my chest. My legs froze, and for a moment I thought I was imagining it. But then, he turned slowly and started walking toward me. I bolted. I don't remember how I managed to get to my room. I remember my heart racing, the sound of my footsteps echoing in the empty hallway, and my hand fumbling with the key. When I finally slammed the door shut, I locked it and sank down against it, gasping for breath. But the fear didn't stop there. I could hear the faint sound of footsteps outside my door, slow, methodical. And then, the whispering started. Low at first, like a soft breeze, then rising in volume until I could hear words. "I know you're in there." I held my breath, praying that whatever was outside would just leave. But the whispers didn't stop. They grew louder, more insistent, until they filled the room. "Open the door, Liam. I want to see your eyes." I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed my phone and called Mark, but the line went dead after a few seconds. Panic set in as I realized I was completely alone. The whispers were followed by a sudden pounding on the door. 3, then 4, then 5 strikes, each one harder than the last. The door buckled under the force, but it held. By the time the sun began to rise, I was still holed up in my room, too terrified to move. The noises stopped just before dawn, but I knew something was wrong. I hadn't seen the man again, but I felt his presence, lingering, waiting. The next morning, I decided to leave. I checked out of the motel as quickly as possible, trying to avoid Judy. As I was loading my car, I caught sight of something that made my blood run cold. In the reflection of my rearview mirror, I saw him again. The man, standing across the street, staring directly at me. But this time, his eyes were not just black. They were hollow. There was nothing there, only emptiness. I slammed the car door shut and drove away without looking back. I haven't been back to Myrtle Beach since that night. I tried to tell people what happened, but no one believed me. They said it was a combination of stress and exhaustion, that I'd probably just seen some strange local character. But deep down, I know what I saw. The thing about the black-eyed man is that he doesn't just haunt you physically. He gets inside your mind. He waits for the right moment to strike, and when he does, it's never when you expect it. Judy at the front desk? She knew him. I'm sure of it now. The warning, the cryptic words, she had seen him too. And I'm not the only one. There are stories all over the internet now about people who saw a man with solid black eyes, wandering strange places like deserted motels, empty beaches, or isolated forests. Some people say he's an urban legend. Others say he's something far worse. I still hear him sometimes, late at night, standing just beyond the edge of my vision, always waiting, always watching.